and welcome to Mkanya TV. We have just returned from a journey through Egypt's grand museums, marveling at the wealth of history preserved within their walls. However, one striking absence caught our attention. There is no mention of Joseph and Moses, two revered biblical figures whose story of faith, wisdom, and divine favor is central to the scriptures. Why are such significant figures seemingly missing from these historical records? Is this a matter of lost evidence, historical oversight, or intentional omission? We have a distinguished panel to explore this mystery. Together, we will seek to understand why Joseph and Moses' legacies, so deeply woven into sacred texts, does not appear in the halls of Egypt's great museums. Join us as we uncover the deeper spiritual and historical implications of this question.
With me here is the Zimbabwe United Methodist Church lay leader in the United Kingdom Mission area, Mr. James Kapuma.
Thank you for having me. Indeed, it has been a pleasure being in Egypt. I've visited all the places we have mentioned: Mount Sinai, Cairo, the pyramids in Giza, and of course the Red Sea. We have had tour guides who were with us throughout our stay here, and of course I was really perplexed by the failure of all of them to mention important figures in the Egyptian history. Of course, Moses was mentioned in Mount Sinai as Musa, just for a little bit. That's where he was given the 10 Commandments. But Joseph really wasn't mentioned at all. It was only mentioned once when I actually asked. When I went to the museum, when I saw the pharaohs, when I saw all the other pharaohs that were showing us, and not even a sculpture of Joseph, who was so significant to their history. As you know, Joseph is kind of in their history very significant in terms of religious teachings, in terms of leadership here in Egypt, in terms of providence, provision, in terms of forgiveness and all those things. For example, when I talk of providence, you know that one of the pharaohs had a dream about drought and plenty, and Joseph was able to interpret this, and he managed to make sure Egypt had sufficient food. All other countries had to come to Egypt to get food for them, and it made them so popular, and he was a governor here, and yet he is never mentioned anywhere in the history. To me, it shows that people think about themselves only. Foreigners don't matter, no matter how much they help them.
Do you feel, or do you think that the Egyptians deliberately omitted Joseph and Moses in their national museum, or it is something else beyond? We don't know. It's like, well, what did you think?
They did, because when asked about Joseph, one of the guides simply said, "Oh, Joseph, when he died, he was buried in the river Nile, and when the Israelites were about to go back to Israel, they wanted to find where his remains were. We're told actually that one old woman went to Moses and simply said, Moses, if you want me to show you where the remains of Joseph are, make me younger." It was kind of an interesting story. And they believe and they know that Moses, as a prophet, he managed to make this woman younger, and she went and showed them where the remains of Joseph were, and they managed to collect all the remains of Joseph and took him back to Israel. And what is interesting is where he was buried in River Nile, because River Nile is known for provision. This is a drought-stricken country. So now provides them. So they know that Joseph was very significant in terms of provision. So they just wanted their belief maybe to have Joseph in now so that they continue to have plenty. And yet in their history, in everything in their museum, there's not even a single mention of the word Joseph, but the kind of mention all the pharaohs 5,000 years ago, whatever, so many years ago, and yet they failed to mention Joseph, who transformed this nation.
We've been to the museum, which they call the National Museum in Egypt, which is in Cairo.
Yes.
Which we went and we had a total tour of the museum ourselves.
Absolutely.
Interestingly, in that museum, there's nothing about Moses. There's nothing about Joseph, who was in actual fact the governor of this country at one point.
Yes.
So basically what we are saying here is, from your own perception, do you think the Egyptians are hiding something here?
It may not be a deliberate hiding, but I think it is fair to say that there is a history missing. There is a part of the history that's missing. Whether that's missing is deliberate or not, it remains a question.
mystery.
Yes, it remains a mystery, because as you said, that we know that Joseph from the Bible, he was the governor of this country. From prison he was made governor, and so why that history is not in a most important museum of that of Egyptian country remains a mystery.
Which was built in the 16th century.
Which was built,
the tour guide.
yes, which was built in the 16th century.
Very interesting, Mr. Kapuma. That when we made the tour in the National Museum, the tour guide actually acknowledged the existence of Joseph,
Yes.
and what he did for this country. But when the question was popped up that why he is not existing here, the answer he gave is because the Jews, the Israelites, took away his remains
which
and
is-
buried them in
that's not-
Palestine.
That should not be the
So,
reason.
that's
Because
not-
even the remains of some of the pharaohs are not there. Yeah, they managed to do the stages, but the remains are not there. Why not of Joseph? The pharaohs that we saw, they built the pyramids. What is the pyramids which are empty?
So as a Christian, you felt a bit disappointed by that.
Very much disappointed. And at some point I was inclined to think that's why this country, because it was a country of plenty, as you might know, but if you look at it now, there's nothing. It's dry. It's dry. As a Christian, I'm inclined to believe that kind of God is not happy for these two figures to not to be mentioned at all.
Mr. Kapuma, I would want to thank you for your time to give your own personal opinion about Joseph and Moses' history in terms of the Egyptian. To give our analysis, I pass you over to Adolf Mukande, one of our senior journalists and the co-director of Mukanya TV, your best online television. Over to you, Mr. Mukande.
As we conclude this enlightening discussion, we are reminded that history and faith often walk parallel paths, one rooted in physical evidence, while the other in divine revelation. The absence of Joseph and Moses' names in Egyptian museums does not diminish their significance in Scripture, where their stories continue to inspire millions across generations. Whether their legacy was lost to time, erased from records, or simply remains undiscovered, we as believers hold on to the truth that God's hand was upon Joseph and Moses. Their stories are not just history, they are about faith, perseverance, and divine purpose. Egyptian authorities often highlight historical narratives that reinforce national pride and the country's ingenious achievements, particularly those of the pharaohs and great dynasties. Acknowledging Joseph and Moses' stories as a central part of their history would shift focus toward foreign influences which might not align with nationalistic perspectives on Egypt's past. Let this conversation encourage us to seek knowledge with open hearts while standing firm in our faith. May we continue to explore, question, and reflect, knowing that God's truth endures beyond the limits of human records. Thank you for joining us, and may the Lord bless you abundantly.